Page. Hi, hello, it's me, your fairy godmother. Fairy godmother in health. Hi. So, I get a lot of people asking me questions about meal plans, wanting meal plans, and for the longest time, I've not been a huge fan. I think, unless you are an athlete, someone who is looking to go into a figure competition, compete on stage, someone who needs to make weight for a sport, for example, something that is weight based categories such as powerlifting, weightlifting, um, sailing comes to mind. What else? A lot of the martial arts compete in weight brackets and weight categories. Then I really don't think a meal plan is for you. And here's why: it comes with no education, okay? And there's a lot of ways in which meal plans can go wrong. I've been on the receiving end of that. Can you believe? Flashback to I want to say it was about 2012. I went and saw a nutritionist, and they put me on a 1200 calorie diet. And yes, I lost weight. And yes, I was starving. Thanks for asking. It was horrible. I do not enjoy being starving. I don't think anyone enjoys being starving. And if being starving is a choice, then why would you choose that? You cannot get enough vitamins and minerals on a 1200 calorie diet. Not even a growing female should be on a 1200 calorie diet. A 10, 12-year-old girl should not be on a 1200 calorie diet. And yet, so many grown ass women are barely even eating that in a day. That is for another time. That is for a different rant. But what I want to highlight here is, if you put your nutrition in the hands of the wrong person, it is easy to get information that is going to send you into a really bad pattern of feeling super, super, super hungry and then just eating everything in plain sight, because hunger is not sustainable beyond a certain point. Now, of course, if you're in a caloric deficit, you should expect to be hungry, and there is a manageable amount of hunger. Okay, for me, up to a 4 out of 10 is a normal, manageable, okay amount of hunger. Once we get past a 4, we probably are starting to get into the range of needing a meal within 30 to 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the person. I go from 0 to hangry in about 12 seconds. So that's just me. We're all a little different here. That goes without saying. But beyond a 4 out of 10 for hunger, that is not sustainable. That is not something that we should be pushing to increase. We should not be trying to get to a 5, 6, 7 out of 10 hungry before we entertain the idea of eating. If we are already there, we should have the next meal on our radar, the next snack on our radar. We should be making sure we're sufficiently hydrated, getting enough protein at regular intervals, and getting enough fiber in the diet. That should go without saying, though it doesn't. Now, where I really have an issue with meal plans is that anyone can go on the internet and type in different numbers and bippity boppity boop and get something very inaccurate, because people tend to think they are way more active than what they are, and that they consume about 20% fewer calories than what they consume. So from the get go, it's easy to get inaccurate numbers. And we like to give ourselves more credit than what we deserve. So naturally, that happens. So, where a lot of people don't see success with sticking to meal plans is that the numbers they're working off from the beginning are incorrect. Okay. And a lot of people, too, are so quick to jump into a caloric deficit that they don't even really know what their maintenance numbers are. And so it's just not a whole lot of fun to dive straight into a caloric deficit I like to add before I subtract. So the way in which I work with people, I'm always looking for ways that I can add to the way that they eat before I suggest subtracting. Psychologically, it's more enjoyable. Who doesn't want to be told to eat more rather than eat less? I think you'll agree it's a lot more fun to be told or encouraged to eat more than to eat less. So it doesn't help to have inaccurate numbers from the beginning. And it's very, very easy to get inaccurate information from the get-go. Now, if you are not able to sustain the way that you're eating, again, it's very hard to understand if the way that you're eating does in fact put you in a deficit, or if it is in fact your maintenance calories. Because unless you've been consistent in training the same way, sleeping the same way, hydrating the same way, taking those same supplements at the same time each day, etc., 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 for 12 to 16 weeks, again, it's very, very challenging to know if those calories are keeping you where you are, if they're helping you lose weight, or if they're helping you to gain. And yes, some people do want to gain weight. Not everyone wants to lose weight. So right from the get-go, the first issue is it's easy to have the wrong numbers. Speaking from experience, going to a nutritionist, being put on a 1200 calorie diet, I definitely was not eating enough protein, and nor was the nutritionist trying to suggest that I should eat more protein. There was like not even 1 gram per kilo in that diet or meal plan. So it was just bad, 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 bad in so many ways for so many different reasons. And no wonder it didn't last. I think maybe I stuck to that for 6 months, maybe. And it was just no way to live, especially given the training I was doing. I was training for at least 2 hours a day, 4 to 5 times a week. And I couldn't because I couldn't recover. My recovery was horrendous. Why? I didn't have enough nutrients, and I definitely didn't have enough protein, and I wasn't getting enough carbs before training. So even with all that said, you can still go to a professional, you can still go to someone who's qualified and get the wrong data. The second issue is meal plans often don't factor in people's different flavor profiles, and preferences and textures. Often we have cravings because we also crave texture. Now, if all of the food you eat is steamed, so with bodybuilders, we're going to see that a lot. We're going to see a lot of steamed cauliflower, blanched cauliflower, broccoli, steamed chicken breast, sous vide chicken breast, and rice. All of that food has a similar texture. It's a bit soft. It's not quite a puree. It's not super firm. It's somewhere in between. That is not super sustainable for most people because eating food that is all very much the same texture gets a bit mundane. I'm sure you'll agree. So, meal plans often don't work because they don't factor this in. Who am I to tell one person to eat the way that I eat when eating is so personal? I grew up eating certain foods. I gravitate towards certain foods. I like certain foods, and the next person may have totally different literal taste. They might have complete different taste. They might like really bitter foods. They might like really raw foods. They might like really bitter foods. I think I already said that. You get what I'm trying to say. That is not my jam, and that's okay. But as a coach, if I am working with a person who likes raw food and bitter foods, I should be looking for foods that fit into those preferences. Preferences are super important. You should be eating foods that you enjoy. That should form part of your daily way of eating. And again, unless you're training for a competition that requires you to be a certain weight, unless you're an athlete who needs to cut weight or gain weight, then I'm going to say a meal plan is not for you. It's just not. So often in a meal plan, what is missing will be certain nutrients. We get so caught up in macros, protein, carbs, fats, and alcohol. And whilst that has a time and a place, it's all well and good to eat that way and to hit those numbers, but if you're consistently low in B vitamins, you're going to feel low in energy. If you're consistently low in magnesium, you might chronically feel thirsty and might have trouble sleeping. You might have spasms and cramps in the calf muscle. You might wake up with cramps in your calf muscle because you're deficient in magnesium. So meal plans often don't factor this in, and this is why I like using Chronometer instead of MyFitnessPal. So Chronometer will give me the breakdown of a person's micronutrient intake, and I like that. I want to see if a person is consistently hitting their micronutrient targets as well as their macronutrient targets. Again, it's all well and good to get enough protein into the diet, but if you're consistently not getting enough vitamin C, your immune system might be compromised. If you're consistently low in zinc, again, you might find that you get sick the moment someone next to you sneezes, and that's no way of living. So, this is another issue that I have with meal plans. Going on to my third issue is that, and this kind of just elaborates on what I just mentioned, but they're just not customized to the way that you like to eat. If you grew up eating Indian cuisine and now suddenly you're trying to adhere to a meal plan which is very Western in influence or by design, then that's gonna be tough. Like if someone told me to just start eating meals which were all very, Chinese or very Asian, and that's not what I'm accustomed to, that's going to be challenging because I naturally don't gravitate towards those foods or those flavors, and there's no comfort in that. And people gravitate towards food for comfort. That's okay. Within reason, there's a healthy amount of comfort we can get from food. And then when you rely on food for comfort, that's another issue. But this is something we don't get in a template, carbon copy, cookie cutter, copy paste meal plan. Is what does the person in front of me like to eat? That is always where I like to start when I speak to a person about nutrition. Like, I like to write down what they currently eat and ask, what is it that you like about that food? Or you like the fact that it's cold and creamy? Now, I say this because I am lactose intolerant. It's quite hard for me to have cold and creamy foods because typically cold and creamy foods have dairy. And sad face, I can't really do dairy. I can do yogurt within reason. Thank God for soy ice cream. That is like such a nice indulgence on a hot day from time to time. But typically speaking, cold and creamy is really hard for me to get in my diet because of the dairy factor. So sometimes I don't crave ice cream per se, but I crave something cold and of that texture because I don't typically get the chance to eat it. A meal plan is not going to factor that in. It's going to say you need X amount of calories from protein, X amount of calories from carbs, total caloric intake for the day will be X, Y, and Z. And humans are just not like that. We tend to think we're robots and light switches, but we are so not. We are so multifactorial, so multidimensional, and we need to learn how to work with ourselves much better than what we do. So the more respect we can give to our own flavor preferences and preferences over texture, as well as taste, the more aligned we are when it comes to eating that way. That is going to be far more sustainable than trying to force yourself to eat chicken and broccoli and rice, especially if you don't like those foods. Now, if you like chicken, broccoli, and rice, go for it. Great. If that works for you, amazing. But it's not for everyone, and it's not for everyone beyond 12 weeks or 16 weeks. So we need to think a little longer term here when it comes to the sustainability factor and integrating this into our lifestyle, which no one knows how to do because no one understands behavioral change, because no one understands behavioral change. Like, just so few people get it, especially in the health realm. So there's that. Moving on to my next point. Yes. Oh my gosh. There's, I touched on this earlier. There's no education when it comes to meal plans, right? We don't understand the context. If we don't understand how to eat and when it's best to eat what macro and what to eat more of when we're feeling unwell, then we're not really empowered to take things further for ourselves. So, if we know, for example, that typically speaking, red vegetables and fruits are going to be higher in vitamin C, if we're feeling like our immune system is a little compromised, then we know that we can, optimize that knowledge by consuming more of those foods, those zinc rich and vitamin C rich foods. And that's going to help us to recover. That's hugely beneficial. You don't then need to go to a doctor and get a prescription for X, Y, and Z. If you have the information that vitamin C is good for immune systems and I can get vitamin C from red colored fruits and vegetables, that is going to save you a ton of time. Meal plans don't give you that. Meal plans say eat 20 grams of protein for breakfast. That means you have to have 4 hard boiled eggs. And you go, ew, that doesn't sound too tasty. Also, what if I don't want 4 hard boiled eggs? What if I want 20 grams of protein from something else? They're just too rigid. And again, people, although we like to think we're robots, we so are not. We are so effing complicated. I can't even begin to tell you. Meal plans really let us down when it comes to this. So we end up feeling like we want to eat this way, the meal plan wants us to eat this way, and that causes friction. And where there's friction, nothing sticks. And so if nothing sticks, we don't get results. And when we don't get results, we feel disheartened, we feel discouraged, we feel like giving up. So we give up until we feel that we have enough motivation to start all over again. And I say start all over again because that's the language we use. You could just look at it as another chapter, but no, most people look at it as I have to start from zero. Very dramatic, shall we say. So meal plans don't give you that. They don't give you the education of, hey, if you're going to do a workout in the morning, you might want to get some carbs before that workout. Here are some great sources that are easy to digest, easy for the body to access, and are not going to feel like they're coming up, 30 minutes after eating them. A meal plan doesn't give you that. A meal plan goes, have protein shake for breakfast at 6 a.m. What if you don't want that? What if you don't feel like protein shake? What if you don't like protein powder? What if that fake artificial sweetener taste just gives you the heebie-jeebies? What if it makes you just want to vomit in your own mouth? Like the thought of that, a lot of people are not on board with. So then what? Then your meal plan has let you down, my friend. And this is why they don't work. Again, unless you're an athlete, unless you're trying to make a weight for a sport, you shouldn't be following a meal plan. That's my personal opinion. And I've never met someone who has been able to follow one long term. Now that I think about it, I don't know a person who has been able to follow a meal plan successfully long term. There's probably a reason for that, okay? It goes against human behavior. And when we feel deprived, which often we feel deprived when we are trying to follow a meal plan, because I have to eat this way, and the moment I don't, then I've effed up. I might as well really F up. And then you feel bad about the fact that you effed up. So then you have to punish yourself by going for 10-kilometer runs and then skipping the next 2 meals. And then you keep yourself stuck in this vicious cycle of punishing yourself and then sticking to the meal plan for one day and then getting sick of it. So then going against it, because when people feel deprived, no chance. You cannot stick to anything when you feel deprived. It just goes against human behavior. We are designed to rebel when we feel like we're being deprived. There's a reason for that. So bad taking unnatural sweetener. I would disagree with you there. There's not a whole bunch of evidence to suggest that artificial sweetener is bad for you. You have to consume it in tremendously large quantities in order for that to have a deleterious effect on your health. I've done a podcast with a scientist on the effects of artificial sweeteners, and you can go to that podcast and listen to the research yourself. But there's nothing that substantial to suggest that taking it is quote unquote bad. I don't like labeling food as inherently good or inherently bad. To take unnatural sweeteners in large quantities, and when I say large quantities, I mean like, beyond a few milligrams. You have to take it in such huge volumes in order for that to negatively affect you. But a lot of people don't like the sensation of artificial sweetener on their tongue or on their mouth, and they just, generally speaking, don't like artificial sweeteners. The texture, the taste, something with a lot of people just doesn't mesh so well. That is them talking. That's their preference. No judgment. So yeah, that's just what I have to say about artificial sweetness. So you can go to that podcast. Laura Phillips Real Talk is the name of it. Again, it's Victoria. She's a scientist. Her last name, I had to practice saying it quite a few times, so don't hate me for not being able to say it on command, but it is there. The last point I wanted to make about meal plans is they certainly don't help people who are currently in a cycle of self-sabotage. And sometimes we quote unquote fail at things because we are determined to prove to ourselves that we are going to fail and that we can never be any different to what we are. We often set goals thinking that goals are good to set because it means I'm ambitious. Often, actually, we set goals to prove to ourselves that we're not going to reach that goal. And often that forms part of a self-sabotage cycle. Meal plans, I don't want to say encourage, they facilitate that behavior, okay? Becomes another mechanism upon which we can judge ourselves because there are a lot of tangible metrics within a meal plan. Did you get X amount of calories from protein, carbs, fats? Did you consume 1,500 calories today? Or were you in a deficit? Were you 200 calories over because you chose to eat out, or because you had a slice of birthday cake, or because you had a drink with a friend who was visiting Singapore who you haven't seen for 5 years? Meal plans don't factor that in. And so we are not able to live such a rigid lifestyle if what we have to measure our quote unquote success with is so rigid. Again, it just becomes very challenging to feel as though we've made progress in the sense that we've nourished ourselves and we've gotten really good macronutrients and micronutrients in today. Like, I had a lot of variety in my food today. I had a salad which had, 4 or 5 different ingredients, and then I had a different salad at dinner time and it had another 5 different ingredients. That is all valuable to the body. But when it comes to a meal plan, we don't really factor in micronutrients. We don't factor in the, vitamins and minerals that we get and the value of that. So for people who are low in self-belief, people who are addicted to judging themselves and proving to themselves that they're never going to lose weight and that they'll always be a size 20 and they'll always have 6 dress sizes of clothes in their wardrobe, they'll always have from size 8 to size 16. Meal plans are tremendously unhelpful because, again, it gives you a lot of numbers, and with a lot of numbers invites a lot of judgment because numbers are very black and white. And so when we don't get black, then we must be white. Then white must be true, whatever meaning we attach to that. Okay, so for example, I'm a failure. I'm always going to be overweight. I'm always going to have 6 dress sizes in my wardrobe. I'll never have my pre-pregnancy body. I will indefinitely be this size. I'll always gain a kilo every year. My husband will never think that I'm beautiful again. He's going to cheat on me with someone who's skinnier and younger and fitter, etc., etc., etc. So they're just some examples. This is where meal plans can really facilitate that judgment. And this is also why I really go out of my way to choose my language with food very intentionally. I avoid saying good and bad. At the end of the day, calories are calories. And with some calories, we get a lot of vitamins and minerals. And with some calories, we get a lot of protein. And with some calories, we get a lot of fat. And with some, we get a lot of carbs. And with some, we get alcohol. And that's just how it is. You know, there is value in being able to say yes to a slice of pizza for a lot of people. There's also value in being able to say no to a slice of pizza. And both can be valuable to the same person at different points in their journey. So that's important to remember as well. That's why I try and keep my language very neutral when it comes to food and nutrition. So these are the issues I have with meal plans. These are some of the contributing factors that make it challenging to stick to a meal plan. This is why I feel meal plans are not really that helpful for most people. Again, unless you're an athlete, especially one who's trying to make a certain weight for a sport or for a figure competition like a bodybuilding show, I don't feel that it should be the go-to option. What I do with the people I work with is I try and understand how they currently eat in terms of their food selection. Do they eat yogurt? Are they eating vegetables? Do they eat fruit? What sources of protein do they have in their diet? What sources of carbs do they have? Arguably, fruit and veg are carbs, I get it. But when are they having carbs? When do they feel energized or energetic? Do they have food allergies or sensitivities? And how can I just tweak that approach to make it like 5 or 10% more effective in terms of timing? Do we need to time our meals before exercise a little better? Are they feeling energized during their workout? Are they feeling completely flat? Would they feel better if we ate earlier in the day or earlier before exercise? Or would they feel better if they ate just before exercising? Would they feel better if they had a bigger breakfast or a smaller breakfast, a bigger dinner or a smaller meal for dinner? What is their activity like during the day? Do they tend to exercise in the morning or the evening? Does it depend? Do they take long haul flights? How often are they flying? How is their digestion when they fly? There are so many factors that need to be considered when it comes to helping a person optimize how they eat. It's just not so straightforward and simple to suggest one way of eating. And again, meal plans just tend to be so incredibly one-dimensional, and people are so not one-dimensional that the benefit from trying to follow the meal plan often ends up causing so much more frustration than what it actually creates in terms of long-term change. You know, what we tend to get out of it is feeling annoyed, feeling discouraged, feeling disheartened, feeling lost, not knowing what to do when life isn't like this, when life doesn't go according to plan. And when does life ever go according to plan? When you give someone templates to work with, and when you give them options and different approaches they can take based on different circumstances which may come up, then you've empowered them. When someone knows how to eat based on having a tasting menu in the afternoon, or how to nourish themselves when they have guests in town, or when they're cooking for 10 people instead of 4 people, what to eat if they're on a long haul flight. I mean, there's so many different tips and tricks and tweaks you can make so that you can feel even better in your own skin, feel more energized, feel stronger, feel that you can recover better from your exercise. And digestion is a taxing process, y'all. Like, that takes 6 hours. That is not easy. You don't want to make that more challenging than what it needs to be. So when you digest well, you automatically have more energy because your body is not spending so much time digesting food that doesn't agree with it, or that it just doesn't like digesting. Or when you finally eat in a stress-free state instead of always eating at your work desk, which means that you end up with a tummy ache, which means that you feel bloated. You know, this is the sort of thing that a meal plan is just not going to cover. This is why having a coach, to guide you through this can make such a tremendous difference. So I really encourage you to factor that in the next time you're looking for a meal plan or looking to just populate those macros and hit the ground running. I strongly suggest you think about these things and ask yourself whether that feels as though it might be a sustainable approach for you. Again, I've not met a person, I can't think of anyone who has managed to follow a meal plan long term. Yeah. So again, there's probably a good reason behind that if I'm just thinking out loud. So I hope you took value from this talk. Any questions that you have, please let me know. I always want to talk about what you want to hear about. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about next. I am open to your suggestions. I hope you have an amazing day and thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.